that there is a possibility of technical difficulties. Should we receive any disruptions, I would ask that everyone remain patient as we work to fix the issues and resume the meeting as soon as possible. In terms of meeting decorum, as each item is presented, I will ask board members if the item is received or carried. If you are joining without video, please say your name before speaking. If you are joining the meeting from a location with background noise, please keep yourself muted until it is time for you to speak. I'd also like to remind everyone to mute their notifications and alerts to avoid any disruptions in the meeting. Following the public meeting, we will have our in-camera meeting, and so I will now proceed to the agenda. Confirmation of the agenda. I will be looking to add one item to the start of the agenda. As the chair of the board, I would like to make a verbal report prior to the chief's verbal report, so that Ottawa Police Services confirmed the amended agenda of November 23rd, 2020. Is that amended agenda item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you.
Carried.
Okay, confirmations of minutes 28 of October 26 and minutes 29 of November 4th, 2020. Carried?
Carried. Carried.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest?
Nope.
Thank you. Seeing none. Committee reports from committee chairs and minutes. Finance and Audit Committee draft minutes number 12 of November 9th, and the Human Resources Committee draft minutes number 8 of November 17th. I would like to call on the committee chairs to provide a brief update on the previous meetings held, starting with Vice Chair Smallwood.
Thank you, Chair. The meeting was held to review the 2021 capital and operating budget. There were over 40 delegates who came to speak. While I won't attempt to list all of their concerns that were raised, I'll just mention a couple of the ones that were raised by several delegates. There was a vigorous expression of concern about an increase to the police budget, with a clear preference that it either be frozen or in some cases reduced, and that the additional funds should go towards other social service providers. Additional concerns were raised about the vague timeline for the service's implementation of the mental health strategy, and the idea of completely abolishing the police services was raised. The banning of the use of dynamic entries, which are also known as no-knocks. Multiple delegates questioned the efficacy of the neighborhood resource team, and there are also concerns raised about a lack of transparency. They say that's just sort of a highlight of them. The full list, or a more fulsome list, is found in our minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Smallwood. Member Nerman, can you please provide an update on the HR Committee?
Thank you, Chair. The Human Resources Committee met to elect a new chair and then moved in camera to discuss the collective bargaining with the Ottawa Police Association and Senior Officer Association. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Member Nerman. That the Ottawa Police Services Board received these items for information. Are they received?
Received.
Received.
Inquiries. Are there any inquiries from board members?
Yes, Chair Deans.
Yes.
It's Robert.
Member Sueda.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. After the tragedy of Abdi Rahman, the OPS commissioned a special outreach liaison team, short form OLT, to engage marginalized communities. I'd like to make an inquiry on the findings, recommendations, and why the OLT was discontinued. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. After the tragedy of Abdi Rahman.
Okay. Is that it? So we will.
Chair, I also have an inquiry.
Okay, Member Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you. So I was surprised when I was sent a video from the protest November 21st, 2020, of a long lineup, several deep, of police, of what appeared to be a small protest. and the video showed officers moving towards a likely woman protester who was likely an Ottawa resident. Please update us on your processes and plans regarding peaceful protests in Ottawa in general, and specifically on the one this last weekend. The video is shocking, however, I do not have the full video and the context. I wish to understand this better. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Johnson. Anyone else with an inquiry?
Yes, Chair Dean, I have an inquiry to the chief.
Member Nerman?
Thank you, Chair. Chief, as a board member, I am fully aware of my responsibilities and fully aware of yours. In all fairness, I am also aware of my obligations and limitations under the Police Services Act and your operational powers and decisions and clear-cut boundaries between the two. However, in all fairness and the concerns raised to me by the members of the public in person and through other direct and indirect channels, I would like to be enlightened with the following. A, as you would be aware that members of this coalition were scheduled to meet the members of the board on November 21st, while to the best of my knowledge, there was no preconditions set for this meeting and was purely in good faith and to open a constructive dialogue, how can you justify the action at 4 a.m. in removing these protesters? And B, was there any unjustifiable use of force in these evictions? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Nerman. Is there anyone else that has an inquiry? Seeing none, before we proceed to the consent agenda, I just want to tell you this is the new world that we're living in. We've been notified that we have reached our capacity, apparently on Zoom. So I'm wondering, for those who are not speaking today or speaking later in the meeting, if some of you could consider watching on YouTube so that others who want to get on to speak will have room in this room to speak. So if anyone is watching, if you could switch to the YouTube channel, it would be greatly appreciated. Okay, so we'll now go through the consent agenda and then return to the held items. So the first item, new chair's verbal report. That's the item that we have added. I have some comments I'd like to make, so we are going to hold that item and return to it. And then the chief's verbal report, we will hold this item. Item number 2, the 2021 draft operating and capital budgets, public delegations and approval. There are a number of speakers. At last count, there were, I believe, 87. There may be more by now. So we have a long day ahead of us. And then, just give me a second while I scroll through the agenda. Item number 3, 2021 Police Services Board meeting schedule. That the Ottawa Police Services Board approved the 2021 meeting schedule. Is this item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. Item number 4, board committee appointments. That the Ottawa Police Services Board approve, number 1, the appointment of Councillor King to the Policy and Governance Committee, replacing Member Johnson. And number 2, that the appointment of Member Johnson to the Finance and Audit Committee. Are the committee appointments carried?
Carried.
Carried, thank you. Item number 5, reappointment of Special Constables, Ottawa Police Service. That the Ottawa Police Services Board approve the reappointments of Ottawa Police Service employees Scott Barkley, Rhonda Brangy, and Brian West as Special Constables pursuant to Section 53 of the Police Services Act in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointment form. Is this item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
You. Item number 6, reappointment of Special Constables, Carleton University. That the Ottawa Police Services Board approved the reappointments of Carleton University employees Marcel Benoit and Jeff Condy as Special Constables pursuant to Section 53 of the Police Services Act in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointments form. Is this item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. Item number 7, reappointment of Special Constables OC Transpo. That the Ottawa Police Services Board approve the reappointments of OC Transpo employees Eric Michael Brown and Daniel Patrick Faust as special constables pursuant to Section 53 of the Police Services Act in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointments forms. Is this item carried?
Carried.
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 Thank you. Item number 8, response to inquiry 1-20-10, officers suspended with pay, that the Ottawa Police Services Board received this report for information. Can we
Received.
receive? Thank you. Item number 9, response to inquiry 1-20-13, community safety and well-being plan, that the Ottawa Police Services Board received this report for information.
Received.
Item received. Thank you. Item number 10, response to inquiry 1-20-16, use of personal protective equipment, PPE, by OPS officers. Is this item received?
Received.
Item number 11, response to inquiry 1-20-20, mask policy in light of religious practices. That the Ottawa
Received.
Police Services Board received this report for information. Is it received?
Received.
Thank you. Item number 12, response to inquiry 1-2022, policy and training on rights to counsel. Is this item received?
Received.
Received.
Thank you. Item number 13, financial status report, third quarter 2020. Is this item received?
Received.
Received.
Item number 14, performance report, third quarter 2020. Is this item received?
Received.
And item number 15, workplace management report, third quarter. Received?
Received.
Item number 16, outstanding board inquiries and motions from November 2020. Received?
Received.
Received.
And item number 17, pardon me, I'm losing my voice already. Oh, that's a bad sign. Letters of commendation. That the Ottawa Police Services Board received this report for information.
Received.
Okay, is there any other business? Seeing none, we will then return to our agenda, to the start of the agenda. Just give me a second. Okay, and the first item is the chair's verbal report. I wanted to open with a few comments. So good afternoon, everyone. Today, the board will be considering the 2021 budget for approval. Before we get to that discussion, I want to take a moment to talk about the events of this past Friday. I want to make it abundantly clear, at no time did this board direct the events of Friday night. As chair of the Police Services Board, along with 2 of my board colleagues, we had agreed to meet with representatives of the Justice for Abdirahman Abdi Coalition to state the board's willingness to engage in meaningful dialogue in the hopes that we could find common ground. I was hopeful that in so doing, protesters would see we are genuine in our intent and end the encampment at the intersection of Laurier and Nicholas. The decision to remove the protest was made outside of the control of the board. The service is solely responsible for operations, and these decisions are based on their own assessments of risk and community safety. While it is regrettable that it interfered with invaluable meetings scheduled for the next day, I trust that the Ottawa Police weighed the pros and cons before proceeding. I want everyone who is listening today to know that I understand why protests such as this one we saw here in Ottawa need to happen. For too long, those who are in power have continued to usher forward a relationship between police and the community that is not balanced and which is harmful to many residents, especially those who are from marginalized groups. Where we are today is the result of a system that was created and maintained by those who benefit the most, and this board recognizes that it has long been time for change. I know Friday has further damaged trust between us, and what these events have highlighted for me is that this board needs to work to build our own independent and much stronger relationship with the community. You have my full commitment that I will work with you. I remain open and available to a meeting and will depend on the informed and lived experience of the community as we move forward through several years of hard work ahead. Many believe that the solution can quickly be found in cutting or freezing the police budget. And I do believe that is a future possibility, but I cannot support you in that request at this time. I know you will be disappointed to hear that, but the work that we want to take on requires funding, and we want it done right. Fundamentally, I believe we share a common goal, a police service that serves all citizens free of harassment and discrimination and who has the trust of our residents. And we have already committed to some of what needs to be done to get us there. While we cannot direct Ottawa Police Service to stop using dynamic entries, it is simply outside our mandate. We have committed to reviewing the policies that govern use of force. We recognize that the nature of Ottawa Police Service was making it difficult for those suffering from workplace sexual violence and harassment to come forward, and we have set out a solid plan to address that through an internal working group and through a contract with Rubin Tomlinson. It's not a miracle solution, but it is an important step forward to changing the culture. We heard loud and clear that something needs to be done to change how the Ottawa Police Service responds to some of our most vulnerable residents, including those experiencing mental health events. By listening to you, we will make sure that any new protocol focuses solely on meeting the needs of the community. And we continue to listen. You will see a motion today that asks for additional funding for the board to allow us to do this work in a truly meaningful, independent, and robust way. We heard at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting last week that more officers on the ground is not the right solution for many communities in our city. And we have listened. You will see a motion today asking the Ottawa Police Service to bring a report back to this board on how they can leverage civilian experts instead of sworn officers as part of the neighborhood response teams. These could be more mental health workers or a contract with local outreach teams who know how to reach youth in our communities. Ottawa Police will rely on working with key community partners to determine what will work best for each community. I also want to take a moment to speak to you about the need to engage with your counselors. I have dedicated much of my efforts on council to getting residents and low-income communities the resources they need, not only to survive, but also to thrive. Access to employment programs, mentorship opportunities, youth services, food security, housing, mental health and addiction services, and more are all necessary. I worked for an entire year to successfully increase funding for social organizations after council initially did not include it in the budget. I convinced my colleagues to create the Building Better Revitalized Neighborhood program. I have voted against budgets that did not invest enough in housing or childcare or ensure those who rely on transit can afford it. Policing in our community is still necessary and it's important. I know firsthand the angst the community feels every time a bullet finds its way into a city park or a bedroom or even a pizza parlor. I have met time and time again with mothers who expressed their concern for their children who were being preyed upon at bus stops by drug dealers and gang members. I frequently hear about the need for traffic enforcement and community policing. I know the desire in many communities for increased police presence. I also know that these experiences are often a result of individuals getting too far downstream without proper intervention, and we will not solve this through policing. But I believe that police can be a valuable partner in this work. And when we hired Chief Slowly, we did so with this goal in mind. We have a chief that, despite being subjected to hate, continues to support the board through its mission to change this service. Together, we have recognized and publicly acknowledged systemic racism, both conscious and unconscious bias in all institutions, including police. Leadership will be vital to the work we have ahead of us. Beyond anything else, what I want the community to take away from today is that we are committed to working with you as we navigate our way forward toward more meaningful change and a more just society. Those are my comments. Does any member of the board, I know Chief Slowly would like to say a few words on this, but does any member of the board want to say anything before I recognize the chief?
I support what you have said, Chair Deans, and this is the time we should be working collectively with the community, with our all stakeholders to meet with these expectations from the members of the community going forward. So I fully support.
Thank you.
Chair Dean,
Member Sueda?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I too agree with what you've said. And just have a few words as well, if I may, Chair. This budget process has been truly a humbling experience for me. I've stayed up many nights thinking about the people that have stopped their own personal lives to protest in what they believe in. I have listened to various delegations for the past several weeks, and I've seen a lot of passion. I've also talked to many people that did not want to be part of the public delegation, but want to express their feelings. I joined the board this past March to bring attention to the issues that face police and the people they serve. 2020 has brought a lot of surprises, but it has also brought a lot of issues to the forefront. It is clear that there's a lot of hurt out there, from the Abdi Rahman, may God rest his soul, to systemic issues that face society, to mental health. I believe strongly in equality for all people, and I believe strongly in law and order. I also believe that both can be achieved together, excuse me, and not at the expense of each other. I have heard everything from keep the status quo to abolish the police to everything in between. And I think the answer falls somewhere in the middle. I will continue to listen to the public because I understand that there's a lot of hurt and that changes need to be made. Sometimes the change that is sought after does not come as a night and day change because of the many factors that have to be balanced. My commitment to the public is to navigate the system to bring on the change that is sought in a balanced approach. Just over a year ago, the board took a big step in bringing about change. When the board was looking for a new chief for the Ottawa Police, they made a conscious effort to find someone that can bring change. I support our chief, and I take him at his words and actions to be an agent of change. Again, I know change may not come fast enough for some people, but we need to give the chief time to address the many issues. As a board member and as a member of the public who wants to see change, I expect the chief to make major strides in 2021 when it comes to racial issues, equality, and mental health. Today, we lean on the police to address an assortment of issues. And I will be the first to acknowledge that police may not be the best organization to deal with certain issues, but police are currently the ones that have to do the job. The question becomes, what organization and/or training do we fund, defund, or probably more appropriately, reallocate funds to that can best address these issues? The question for me as a board member is, how do I channel the passion and hurt of the community to create a better police service? And what do we do today until we find a better way forward? I am supportive of this budget, not because I want more police going around arresting people. I am in support of the budget because I believe this is a transitional budget for better things to come. I believe in the chief. I believe that the chief will bring us as a community closer to where the passionate voices have asked I believe in the chief will bring us as a community closer to where the passionate voices have been asking us to go. I am focused on the direction the chief wants to take and not necessarily the money that goes along with it. We just have to give the chief the time to do it And just as importantly, we need to find the right organizations to take on the certain aspects, for example, mental health issues, that police are responsible to do today. I will continue to bring the concerns of our community forward because the hurt is real. As a member of a minority community myself, I will continue to use my personal contacts, experience in business, finance, and community to be a voice for positive and constructive change. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Sueda. I mean, this was an opportunity to focus on speaking about Friday primarily. We will focus on speaking about the more details of the budget and any other changes arising out of today's delegations after we've heard all of the budget delegations, as we did here, several at FAC last week that we're reacting to today. Next is Member Johnson.
Yes, thank you. So I just want to add my support to your comments, Chair Dean, and also to the other board members' comments. And I do, what struck a chord with me is the need to meet and find common ground, and the value of protests needing to happen to really find that change going forward, and to hear the voices, the input of the Ottawa community. I just had one comment, and perhaps it isn't on track here. But after I reviewed the draft police services budget, I did wonder, if we were doing enough to protect the Ottawa community, and did not have clear answers at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting on November the 9th to several questions I asked about training. I know a lot of the delegations are here again today, and you heard these questions. So I just wanted to share that I did send the same questions after the meeting. And when I got answers to the question, I did see that these issues were being addressed, with 50 hours of training for officers each year and a planned efficacy review of training focused on de-escalation training with a focus on racial and mental health issues. 50 hours annually is the same requirement for ongoing education that I have as a family physician. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Member Johnson. Member Meehan.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think everything has been eloquently said. I do support you in your comments today. And I would just like to reiterate to those who are joining us today that the fact that we do believe that things are going to change, but change is going to take a lot of time. And for those of you who want to engage on social media, I just say to you, in my experience, in my 2 years on council and my short time on the Police Services Board, that really serves no purpose. I think productive dialogue is what's needed in this case. And what I have found in social media is that there is really nothing productive to be gained there. So please, don't interpret our silence in other platforms as being dismissive of your concerns. We as a board are not. We hear what you're saying, and we are committed to change. The change, I think, is going to start today. But thank you so much for being here and being part of the process. We're all passionate. I know we're a caring community, and if we can work together, and we are committed to do that, we will move mountains, but moving mountains takes time. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Meehan. Member King.
Thank you, Chair Deans, and I'd like to closely associate my comments and my sentiments with the ones that you had expressed in your verbal update. As many of you know, I was the inaugural co-chair of the Community Equity Council prior to my election as City Councillor in April 2019. And I was proud to be in this role, really working to foster a better working relationship between the Black community, racialized communities, and Indigenous communities in the police service. And I believe that that is a continuing mandate that we have to express across the board here through the police service, ensuring that we are fostering the potential for constructive dialogue to ensure that we create a police service that really emphasizes equity in policing and fairness, both within and without. because we need to have a police service that reflects the diversity of our city. And we need to ensure that that police service treats everybody who it interfaces with equitably. And that should be the continuing task at our police service board. And I'm committed to that task, as I know all the other members are here today. So I do thank you for the work that you have undertaken, Chair Deans, towards really ensuring that we move equity, diversity, and inclusion forward at the Ottawa Police Service.
Okay, thank you, Member King and Chief Slowly.
Chair, board members, thank you. Chair, let me just start by saying I know the amount of time and effort, passion that you and the board members bring to these complex issues. I will say unreservedly and unhesitatingly, this is the best police services board that I have seen. It has worked hard, pushed hard, led hard on tough issues, and for what my opinion is worth, is not only maintaining its important role of oversight, but advancing through oversight a number of major changes that have been taking place in this police service and through this police service, influencing other police agencies, oversight bodies, and governmental agencies. Your efforts, like my efforts, are making positive and needed change. But they will take time. They will never be done perfectly, and they will never satisfy everybody around every issue. But I would like to thank you publicly on behalf of my command team and I for your efforts of oversight, leadership, communication, and coordination with civil society here in the nation's capital and beyond. Chair, of your many points, all of which I concur with, the one that I think is most important is that the board will make greater efforts to have stronger and more independent relationships with the community. I think that's important for oversight in any circumstance, but particularly in policing circumstances. There should be a network that the board and the service are plugged into, but they should not be so overlapping that they fail to provide additional perspectives and insights and information relevant to our respective mandates. And so I would encourage you and the board to continue along that vision and bring it to light. And I would ask that if we can be of any service or support to the board in that effort, we'd be happy to make a contribution. I think it's important, Chair, to provide some additional information that is not available in the public discourse on this public forum around the events of the demonstration that took place at Laurier and Nicholas. And with your permission, I do have a body of information I'd like to share with you and the board and through the board to the public. Thank you.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, let me state, anyone demonstrating in our city has the right for freedom of expression, which is protected under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The Ottawa Police Service's mission in any demonstration is to balance the charter right to freedom of expression and protest with the need to assess and address public safety issues. This is something that we have effectively and ethically done through a rigorous process of a continuous evaluation and improvement over the years. The Ottawa Police Service does this at hundreds of protests every year in the nation's capital. This year alone, in 2020, the Ottawa Police Service has done so for the rally at the Wet'suwet'en, around the Wet'suwet'en issues, the Black Lives Matter march that was held in the early summer, the Justice for Abdi protests, various encampments in and around the central downtown core, as well as the one that took place at the National War Memorial. We take this responsibility of enabling protest, freedom of expression, and the full expression of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms extremely seriously as the police of jurisdiction in the nation's capital. The team that managed the response to the demonstration that took place at the Nicholas and Laurier intersection that started on Thursday afternoon was able to do so without any use of force without any injuries to the community, the demonstrators, or the service members, as well as our other many community partners, other city agencies, other National Capital Region agencies, other emergency services, and other police agencies. There were no injuries involved in the entire operation. We achieved that because of a relentless focus on everyone's safety. The Ottawa Police Service became aware of the demonstration at the intersection on late Thursday afternoon. I think we all know that Nicholas and Laurier is one of the most important, one of the largest, one of the busiest, and one of the most complex intersections in the city. It is vital for first responders like police, paramedics, and firefighters to be able to move between the different parts of the downtown core using that transition point. It provides the public direct access to a number of important healthcare facilities in and around the downtown core. It is a major transit route for people traveling to and from Ontario and Quebec, and for people entering into and exiting from the downtown core. It is a major transportation route for trucks. Closing that intersection affected roads and highways throughout the central area of the city, and in fact, around the city and the surrounding regions, including the province of Quebec. We received no advance notice of this event and learned of it only as calls came into our operations center from the area that a demonstration had materialized and was creating traffic safety and broader public safety issues. The public safety issues were immediately clear. We saw contact between pedestrians, vehicles, demonstrators, leading to increased tension and confrontations. We also immediately saw major impacts on traffic throughout the downtown core and across the city. Our officers who first came onto the scene worked to ensure that the demonstrators and other road users were safe. We coordinated with our partners at the city, the Ontario Provincial Police, the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, and the National Capital Region agencies to manage these disruptions for hours and days. And I want to thank them all publicly for their efforts to support us over those very difficult hours and days. Chair, as you noted in your own comments, the Ottawa Police Service is responsible for public safety, and the public safety equation was at a high level from the moment the demonstrators entered that intersection. We immediately understood the risks, which were increasing with every passing hour and every passing day, and only getting worse. We organized a major response with the Ottawa Police Service officers, which included our police liaison team, and they were designated to the demonstration for the security of the demonstrators and to find a way to safely conclude the event. We had continuous dialogue with the demonstrators over the course of the entire period of this event, where we made it clear all along the way that they were in a dangerous spot, that there were other areas for them to demonstrate. We attempted to help them to facilitate a meaningful demonstration in other more safe areas and under more safe conditions. We offered to assist them in relocating to safer areas. It was clear that there was very little cohesive leadership at that site, capable of or willing to materially negotiate and coordinate to address these public safety issues with us. We watched on social media as there were ongoing calls for more people to come to the site, to bring more encampment materials to the site, and to extend the duration of the demonstration. We saw an extension of the number of people arriving over the hours and days. Despite the negotiations, there were a growing list of demands, many of those demands having little, if anything, to do with policing or oversight of policing, although all related to the material concerns of those demonstrating. And we can appreciate those demands and understand why they were being made, but just understand that the majority of them were well beyond the policing context that included public health, public education, and other very important factors. We saw an extension of the number of people arriving. We also, as we do in all these situations, tried to find solutions all along the way. As I said, our officers maintained constant liaison, communication, and provided a wide variety of safety support services for the demonstrators over the entire period. We gave repeated warnings around the dangers that existed and the illegal actions of inhabiting the intersection and setting up encampments and other materials that were contributing to the safety concerns. Information came in late on Friday that a variety of meetings were being negotiated and arranged between the demonstrators, the board, other levels of government, and other civil society representatives. These may have been important advancements in terms of the demonstrators' concerns, but they were not done so within the command structure that had been set up by the Ottawa Police Service to assess and address the public safety issues. These activities also did not materially decrease the risk associated to the ongoing demonstration. In some cases, it created a further lack of clarity and more confusion and less ability for us to reach a more successful and timely outcome. This is an area that we're going to need to look at carefully in the future for all such demonstrations. Previous experience and, quite frankly, previous inquiries into similar demonstrations have shown that the roles and responsibilities and mutual expectations of police, oversight bodies, and other government bodies need to be clearly articulated and defined in advance of and constantly throughout these types of events. At the end of the day, the decision to bring an end to the demonstration was made for public safety and for the greater public interest. It resulted in the greatest safety for everyone, including the demonstrators. Then it came time to remove the demonstrators from the intersection and to clear the site of the encampment. It included a careful and well thought out plan. We chose the early morning hours of Saturday to lessen the impact on the entire city and to improve the safety of the demonstrators. Multiple warnings were given to the demonstrators to disperse. Paramedics were on scene to ensure anyone who needed medical care could get it immediately, and all interactions were recorded. I want to take a moment to explain the arrest process. It was a slow and methodical process that took place over the course of a full hour. It was meant to ensure that anyone who wished to leave the area was able to do so. Most people chose to leave. Officers slowly approached. They warned the demonstrators repeatedly and paused for several minutes in between the warnings to provide ample time for people to collect their belongings and to leave. Most demonstrators did do that. They collected their belongings and they left. As I said, the entire process took over 1 hour. We set up the process to make sure that anyone who did remain and needed to be arrested would be released as quickly as possible. 13 people were arrested. The only delays in releasing people were for those who initially refused to identify themselves. In total, 13 people were arrested and charged and were arrested. One was released. A young offender was released under the Youth Criminal Justice with a warning. This youth will not face any criminal charges. The other 12 were charged with mischief and were released with conditions. We are working with the Crown right now to look at all the avenues for pre-charge or post-charge diversion. This is not an option for us given the circumstances at the time of arrest. Post-charge diversion. But we are working with the Crown right now to consider post-charge diversions as an option, where again, each of the members of the community who were arrested will not face any criminal jeopardy. That decision will ultimately rest in the Crown's hands, but that is an active negotiation right now. We took multiple steps and sought the advice on how to ensure that the belongings of the demonstrators were secured and maintained and stored in the best way possible. And we did our best to be sensitive to the cultural issues associated to the materials at the site. For example, officers actually maintained guard over a ceremonial frame that had been lit at the protest site until we could seek advice from the Indigenous community on how best to deal with it. That said, we know this is an area where we need to focus more on in the future, that there were some items that we needed to be better aware of, that we were needed to be able to better take security of them and return them to their owners. Steps are being taken now to ensure that this is part of future protest plans and that we do better in this area, particularly as it relates to our Indigenous community. The Ottawa Police Service facilitated a meaningful demonstration for 36 hours in one of the highest risk areas in the city. And we managed a safe outcome at the end of the day to a very long, complicated, and drawn out set of circumstances. We did so while doing our best to respect and uphold the rights of the demonstrators. Ultimately, we used no force. There were no injuries to the community or any of the participants. directly involved in the demonstration. Throughout this, there was a relentless focus on the safety of the demonstrators and the public, and the involved members as well as the other partner agencies. I also understand that some in our community do not share this view. We will continue to listen to those views of others and to try to understand how we can do better going forward. I want to thank the Ottawa Police Service members for their professionalism and their patience over the course of that demonstration. I also want to recognize those members of the public who did their best to also facilitate that demonstration, to understand our efforts to address the public safety concerns, and who ultimately cooperated with the police in order to bring about a safe resolution. Chair, I want to thank you and the board members for taking the time to hear these comments, and I welcome any questions you have. I also recognize there were inquiries made prior to this that we'll need to respond to, and I'm in your hands as to whether we do that now or at some future time.
I think we will do that at a future board meeting, just given that we have about 87 people waiting to address the board. I don't want to hold them up. And it's going to be a long day, but I think we can address, they need to be addressed, and maybe it will take the time to fully address those at our next board meeting. I don't see any questions for you. Are there any questions from board members? Seeing none, can we receive the chair's verbal report? Received. And we'll
Received.
turn the floor over to you, Chief, for your verbal report.
Thank you very much, Chair and members of the board. I know we have a busy and important agenda tonight, but before we get to that, I want to take a moment to recognize what has been a very difficult and sad month for the Ottawa Police Service, as well as for the broader policing community, indeed the province of Ontario. Here in Ottawa, our members are in mourning for the loss of two long-standing members of our police service. First of all, Constable Bruno Gendron. On November 12th, Bruno died at an off-duty medical event. Bruno was 47 years old and left behind his wife and two young children. Constable Bruno Gendron was a valued member of our collision investigations team who joined us after working as a paramedic for many years. His loss has stunned all of us in the policing and paramedic community. I take some comfort knowing that he was with friends, biking in the forest, doing something he loved. Bruno was more than an officer. He was a husband, a father, a hockey coach, and a friend to so many here at our service and across the city and beyond. He will be missed, and we at the Ottawa Police Service offer our sincere condolences to Bruno's family and his friends. The second loss came on November 15th, when retired Ottawa Police Service Constable Guy Giroux died in a tragic incident. Guy was 63 years old at the time. We were equally saddened to learn of the tragic nature of his passing. I've been told that even though Guy was large in stature, he was a gentle soul, a compassionate and caring officer, and someone who had a natural way of connecting with kids and earning their trust. His death, just 8 years after a well-deserved retirement, is being investigated as a homicide, and this has shocked us all. Our thoughts and prayers are with Guy's family and friends during this difficult time. We were also shocked to learn of the on-duty death last week of Ontario Provincial Police Constable Mark Hoving on Manitoulin Island. By all accounts, Constable Hoving was a respected and beloved member of the tight-knit island community. We extended our sympathies to Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police, Tom Creek, as well as to all the members of the Ontario Provincial Police, and to Constable Hoving's family and friends and loved ones. Tragedies like this speak to the humanity of the people who do this work and the toll it takes on them, as well as their families. With COVID, even coming together to mourn these tragic deaths is very, very difficult. But we found ways to be there for each other, including by making sure supports are in place for those who need it. The families, the members who we've lost, and our broader police family here at the Ottawa Police Service. I would like to invite the board to take a moment with me, a moment of silence to recognize the sacrifices of Bruno, of Guy, and of OPP Constable Hoving. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board. I would now like to update the Board on year-to-date core policing operations and results. We in Ottawa continue to run counter to national trends when it comes to violence, particularly violence that relates to firearms. The number of shootings citywide year-to-date continues to trend down, with only 41 events so far this year compared to 70 in 2019. In addition, our officers have recovered 90 crime guns and rifles, including 2 crime guns seized during a traffic investigation just on Friday morning. That is up from 87 overall in 2019. Our Guns and Gangs unit credits the increased success directly to our community members. Our community have actually resulted in a 39% increase in the reporting of illegal handguns. Ottawa residents calling the Ottawa Police Service to alert us to the presence of these dangerous weapons within their communities. Proactive measures by our neighborhood resource teams and our covert units are also having a net new positive impact on these types of violent incidents in our city. Our homicide unit continues its successful solvency rate of the highest end crimes. After a stabbing death in the Somerset ward in November, our officers were able to quickly make an arrest of the man involved. I want to take a moment to recognize the exceptional work being done by that homicide team in ensuring that those who commit such heinous crimes are held to account. Despite the recent progress on weapons-related offenses, we've seen an overall rise in crime in our city over the past 5 years, growing more than 30% over the last half-decade. This is similar to trends across Canada. The severity of crime is also on the rise in the nation's capital, up by 23%. The prevalence of guns in our streets and the number of shootings has had an overall increase of 60% over the last 5 years, despite the year-to-date decreases that we've had in 2020. We know that an enforcement-based approach to crime reduction will not work alone. Chair, you referenced this in your comments. Councillor King, you also referenced this in your comments. A focus on prevention over enforcement is the best way for us to sustainably address violent crime. We need to focus on